So to start, dear colleagues, hope you're all doing well, especially taking into account the current global changes. I greet all of you at our second online conference, and I'm certainly very pleased to see all of you today. As you all know, YNBC is at its starting stage and will be till the end of 2022. In regards to this and beforehand, I would like to thank all of you for joining and supporting for now our modest but ambitious and goal-oriented organization. I am very proud to say that YNBC has now reached a new level. The combined revenue of our member-run companies is exceeding 132 billion USD. There are 86 countries active in YNBC's activity. We have over 70 members in Asia-Pacific countries, and the combined employee count of our member-run companies is slightly exceeding 56,000. The aim of this conference today is to share YNBC's current plans and achievements. Alongside these factors, we're also invited a couple of speakers to share a brief speech to our committee. YNBC is held with the support of the National Coordination Center for Developing Economic Cooperation with the countries of Asia-Pacific region. We partner with companies and organizations such as the Silk Road Chambers of Commerce, a broadcasting company called Phoenix Media Investment Holdings. It's a majority state-owned television network in China. The Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry of Sri Lanka, the International Trade Center, the ICC World Chambers Federation, the Russia-Chinese Guild of Commerce, Service Plan Group. It's one of the largest owner-operated advertising agencies in Europe. The Confederation of Asia-Pacific Chambers of Commerce and Industry, CACCI, and the Northeast Asian Business League, based in Moscow. The targets of YNBC are self-government bodies and regional and federal authorities, state corporations and businesses, nonprofit organizations, and leaders overall. Our work plan for 2022 to 2025 is firstly, till the end of this year, we are planned to launch our first online conference, launch an official website, set up social media pages, work on the development of YNBC's web presence, determine the general international partner from Asia-Pacific countries, and etc. Having these factors accomplished and reached, we are currently working to launching training and family programs, which will start operating by the beginning of 2023. We're working on building trusting relationships with media agencies, increasing YNBC's presence, and partnering with other organizations through which YNBC may gain access to a bigger geography span, wider communications channel, and development in its connections network in the Asia-Pacific region. In 2023, we focus on the development and launch of mobile applications, starting preparation for the first offline conference of YNBC, launch video broadcasts of YNBC, development of its web presence of YNBC through news agencies, opening of an information agency, organization of YNBC's fund, expansion of YNBC's database, and implementation of competitions in eco and IT area startups. Development of interactive platform for studying the historical and cultural heritage of the Asia-Pacific countries. In 2024, we're planning to develop all of these points further on, as well as working on the attraction of venture investments, creation of an investment fund with the involvement of large corporations of the Asia-Pacific countries as founders to finance projects that meet the goals of sustainable development of cities and regions. Opening of offices in the Asia-Pacific region countries and partnering states in order to form consortia of companies to establish import-export relations. And by 2025, we will work on hosting the first offline conference of YNBC, opening YNBC's headquarters in Singapore. We will be preparing and hosting annual offline conferences in different countries of the Asia-Pacific region and steady database formation regarding the board members, reaching a minimum amount of 4,000 members and over 8,000 participants and contacts in the Asia-Pacific region. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask now or perhaps ask me privately. And once again, thank you for attending, and Hopefully, we could develop our further connections throughout the board member meetings this year and the years ahead. If anybody is welcome to say a speech, please, I welcome you. Then I would invite Mr. Day. You had a presentation which you'd like to share. Your microphone, Mr. Day. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, certainly. Let me see what I can do to share my screen, and I'll bring up the. Oh, you. Okay. Thank you very much. What I want to present, and by the way, good afternoon, good evening for most. For me, good morning. Um, my name is Tom Day, Thomas G. Day. And what I've been asked to do is just do this brief presentation. I hope to be done in about 15 or 20 minutes, hopefully quicker than that. But just an introduction of who I am and what my background is, and also some insights into what my experience has been in the global business world, with a few thoughts to go with that. So let's start with the introduction on the next slide. So what I want to talk about now is a bit more of this insight into my own experience having worked in the global market. So as I said, I chaired this standards board. It was very interesting to work there. Several of the members were highly dedicated, very intelligent people, but English was not their primary language. And so we always had to be very sensitive to that issue. Um, and I think one of the many things I've learned is to just give the additional time to make sure things are understood, to speak as clearly as possible. One of the things that I've become very aware of is in dealing in this environment is to speak at a speed and a pronunciation level where it's as easily understood as possible, to not to speak too quickly. Now, I would tell you on a personal level for myself, I grew up in New York, and one of the things I've become very aware of in dealing with people just from around the United States, I think you all realize that depending on where a person is from in the United States, the accent and the terminology can be slightly different. And one of the aspects of New York is it tends to speak, New Yorkers tend to speak rather quickly. And that's the way I grew up. I also, I think, fortunately, because I worked in the US military and then the US Postal Service, I've really learned an accent that's a little more of the typical Midwest accent of the United States, as opposed to some of the more difficult to understand accents that you might get out of an area like New York, or another one that's interesting is the New England, Boston area. So if I wanted to, I could talk like I'm from New York, but I don't talk like that. I try to keep it as clear as possible. Um, as I mentioned, working at the International Post Corporation, um, we had 25 member countries participating, but only 6 of the 25 used English as a native language. Among the 6 were countries like England and Ireland. If you haven't had experience in dealing with business people from those countries, now generally I would say business people, say from Ireland or England. I have very good friends from both, very good friends to the extent they're people that I still talk to almost on a weekly to bi-weekly basis. I was just on the phone yesterday for over an hour with my good friend from Ireland, Liam. Liam and I can understand each other quite well. But if you've ever been to Ireland or England and gotten a little more out into the countryside, for me as an American speaking English, I find it at times very difficult to understand English in the more rural areas of England or Ireland. I can remember having a conversation, happened to be in Singapore actually, with a gentleman from Ireland, and I don't know that I understood most of what the man was saying. He was from the northern realms of the United Kingdom. a bit difficult. Having just been in the UK last spring, I know, having gone to Scotland, that also there I can find that the accents throw me off a bit. So it is interesting to deal with this, that you think English is just this common language, but even English, depending where you are, can be a bit of a challenge. But when you then deal with other members who are not speaking English as a native, um, there's a great realm of differences there. I found, depending upon which country they're from, for example, working in Belgium, um, it's well known that the people of the Netherlands, particularly those with college educations, are very good with English. It's the way they teach their courses in their universities. Whereas other countries, it was a bit more difficult. I think what particularly was difficult, that I had to spend more time working with, I chaired several committees in which we were overseeing agreements among countries. There were pricing trade agreements among the 25, and in some cases, we brought in other countries. In some of the cases, we had committees with more than 30 country participants. And when you're dealing with very specific technical issues around data management, physical acceptance, and processing of mail around the world, which are all part of trade agreements and pricing agreements that have huge financial implication, conducting those kind of committee meetings uh, and getting everyone participating and agreeing and understanding was quite the challenge. So I'm very much tuned into that, and I've worked in that environment for a long time, not just my time at the International Post Corporation. Actually, ever since I became an officer of the U.S. Postal Service in 2001, uh, actually every year I've been engaged in international meetings where I would travel, whether it was to Europe or Asia. I did a few trips to Africa, and I must admit, professionally, I've never done a business trip. I've done personal trips to South America. I've also done both business and personal trips to Oceania, to Australia, New Zealand. So pretty well traveled in both the business and the personal world. On the personal level, I can tell you, my wife and I have been to over 80 countries around the world. We do enjoy it, and we participate. Um, as a side note to all of this, it's obviously much more than just language. One of the things I've always been aware of is the importance of understanding societal and cultural differences among countries. The first time I got a chance to travel overseas was in 1976. That happened to be with the US military. And my experience there was in Germany. But through the years, again, I've been to so many more countries. Um, I think at times, and deservedly so, US citizens, particularly tourists from the United States, are known for not being as aware of societal and cultural differences. And unfortunately, too many US tourists and at times business people travel the world and expect that from a societal cultural standpoint, what they do in the US is what you should be doing in countries around the world. I learned very quickly and fully understand this, that that is not true. And one of the things that I always do as I travel the world is to try to reach a basic understanding of not only the language differences, but some of the societal and cultural differences and how it impacts upon um, business. Again, uh, what I've learned is don't interpret the language, the actions, the behaviors of others in the context of your own country. Something that might be done in the US can have, and likely will have, totally different meanings in other countries. And there may also be significant differences in how it's dealt with in those countries. Now, one of the most significant changes in my own life was living in Korea and working there for 1 year and actively going out into the Korean community. I have friends in Korea. While I have my wife, who's almost with me now for 40 years, but I also have friends from back in those days. A very good friend who I'll be seeing. Actually, I'm traveling to Korea in another week, but I'll be seeing him again. He was just over to visit me last summer here in the U.S. But the gentleman's name is Yang Jae-ho. Yang Jae-ho, Yang being his family name. Jae-ho and I worked together um, to be sponsors of an English language club at the local university, Kyungbuk University in Daegu. And he was a lieutenant in the Korean Navy. I was a captain in the U.S. Army. That's actually the same rank. And we became friends. We helped this group of college students to improve their English language skills. Jay Ho was very good. He went on to get both his master's and PhD in the U.S. And while he was here, both of his children were born. During his 5 years over in the US, he and I and our families would see each other on a pretty regular basis, and we still visit with each other through the years. I had a fairly successful career. So did Jay Hall. He became quite the academic and actually became the chairman of the Department of Pharmacology at his university in Daegu. Um, he just retired last year, but he's still very active in the world. He's um, very prominent researcher speaking at conferences around the world. So I'm very tuned into it. The other thing, just as an example of some of the subtleties and differences, obviously, for anyone who's traveled to Korea, is in the Korean culture at a higher level and more predominant in the culture than what I experienced in the US is the level of respect for those older than you. I mean, it's literally reflected in the language. I have very basic skills in the understanding and speaking, reading and writing for that matter, of the Korean language, but I do understand the three levels of honorifics in the language itself. The simple ability to say hello, annyeong, annyeonghaseyo, annyeonghasemika, depending upon who you're talking to. So very much tuned into that and how that permeates the entire culture of the honorifics and respect that's paid to elders. Something you would never consider doing in the U.S. would be in an early conversation of asking when someone was born, whereas obviously in Korea, it's very common pretty early in a conversation or relationship to ask a basic question about when someone was born so you understand whether who's older or younger than the other. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide.
Yep.
So let me just two basic things. This goes beyond working in the global market. Just my own particular focus and what I've tried to do in my career. I have two key approaches, as I'll describe them, that I really believe are the cornerstone, the very basics of how I try to operate. And I'll just say right up front, the two things that I deal with are trust and integrity. Um, in terms of trust, and I must say, I've worked for a number of people senior to me who don't exactly put forth this approach. But I think what's important is I've always tried with the people on my staff, to give them the trust, to let them work. Now, it's not to say you just let them do whatever they want. You certainly provide guidance and direction, but when it comes to doing it, I want to let them go forth and do it. Um, and you have to let people succeed and fail. Um, Now, I don't want a dismal failure. I mean, you let them struggle, you let them work through it, you let them come up with solutions, you help them where you can. But what I've truly not tried to do is to get into every aspect of what they're doing. I would tell you, not only do I want to trust the people on my staff, but I want whoever I'm working for to trust me. I've been fortunate in my career to have been given a great deal of independence to get my job done. I can tell you what I don't like, what I don't do to the people that work for me, and I don't like my superiors to do to me is to get into every little aspect of what I'm doing. Give me a general guideline, give me a general understanding of what you want to do, give me goals, give me objectives. Give me deadlines. I have no problem with that. But in terms of how I'm actually doing it, let me go forth and doing. And I've been very successful. I've had that degree of independence. I've had a few times where I haven't, and it's very, very frustrating where you get a boss who's into every little thing you do. Um, and I would note I've actually had subordinates who frustrate me. I've spoken to several of them through the years where they were calling me multiple times per day, explaining something to me and asking me what they should do. And I would help them, certainly, but it would reach a point where I'd say eventually, I don't want to use these people's names, but whoever they were, I really had to sit down with them and say, I don't need you to call me all the time on every single thing or meet with me on every single thing. Because if I have to make all the decisions for you, then I really have to question, why do I need you? And so I always imposed upon my staff general support, guidelines, deadlines, all of those things. But I really asked them to go forth and get it done and then just check back with me periodically. So I think trust is important, letting people do the job. And failure and struggles are not bad. That's how people learn. Now, I will note this: there are those who continually fail. That's a different story. And I can tell you in my career, I have had to move people out of positions. I've had to move people down because they weren't working well. And in a few unfortunate cases, I actually had to go so far as to fire people, to remove them entirely. So I'm not saying I'm tolerant of failure, but I don't see failure as bad. It's a learning experience. However, when you continue to fail again and again at the same thing, that has to be dealt with as well. So don't confuse this for being totally forgiving. But this is the way I've tried to work. The other critical aspect I can tell you is integrity. Um, if you're not familiar with the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, it's well known. It's part of the motto of the academy. It's our motto at West Point is duty, honor, country. Honor being the middle point. Um, Very strict about that. It literally, if you don't live up to that standard, you can be removed from the U.S. Military Academy. But it's always ingrained into me the importance of integrity. Um, I've always expected of myself to be honest and complete as possible, but I also require that of my staff. There's probably no quicker, worse way to get in trouble with me than to lie. Um, and lying isn't just telling things that are false. One of the things I found here is when things are bad, people will tell you sometimes they don't, but they don't give you the full story. So you have to be truthful in a timely manner and complete in what you're talking about. One of the things I found out about bad news, things going bad, it doesn't get better with time. I've always practiced the approach that when things are bad, and I've got to inform my boss, the quicker I do that, the better. Don't wait days, don't wait weeks, or in God, some cases, months. You have to be very truthful about that, and certainly don't lie about it. So those are the two biggest things. I would note I didn't put it on the slide. One of the other aspects, and it's not, I wouldn't call it a cornerstone, but it's something that I fully supported in my career, is mentoring. It's helped me immensely. Having someone with experience. I can remember being in my 20s and 30s thinking I knew it all. And now that I'm in my 60s, I do realize I didn't know it all. But what was most important to me was I had senior um, officials of the Postal Service and the military who helped me. They helped me along in the career. They gave me advice. They gave me opportunity. They gave me special projects that led to my success. Mentoring is important, and because I learned that from them, because the reason I advanced so quickly in the U.S. Postal Service was because I had wonderful mentors. I saw the importance of it, and I've always through my career tried to mentor the people underneath me. I can say that one of the proudest things that I had accomplished at the U.S. Postal Service was I helped other people in their careers. And when I left the Postal Service in 2019, a significant number of the senior executives at the U.S. Postal Service had previously worked for me on my staff, and I had helped to mentor them. I was very proud of the fact that I was able to help them in their careers. I don't take credit for what they accomplished because they're great people, but I was able to help them. Mentoring is important. And that's why I'm interested in this organization. Mentoring is important for younger mid-level management. We need to provide mentoring. We need to give them an insight to some of the things to expect, some of the different ways to approach it. So reaching out and doing that, I'm very much attuned to Asia. So that caught my eye also with YNBC. Um, Again, this is what is important to me. It goes beyond my cornerstones, but it's just something that I'm very passionate about. Um, and something I've actively done for the last 40 plus years. And I want to be able to continue to do it. That's what I see. Let's go, I think, to the last slide. Yeah. Um, I don't claim to be the expert on all of this. This happens to be a book I would recommend. And it's written by two people. Now, the first name I was familiar with because he was a senior officer in the U.S. military. Morton Dempsey is also a West Point graduate. I graduated in 1978. Morton Dempsey graduated in 1974. So he's just a little bit ahead of me that I didn't get to serve with him at West Point. But he was on active duty in the Army at the same time as that I was. But he went on to become the most senior officer of the U.S. military. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was in charge of everything. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. It was all under him. He was the top officer of the U.S. military. Excellent gentleman. And then the other one here is Ori Braffman, is the co-writer co-author of this book. I personally interviewed with him for several hours before this book was published. And the title is Radical Inclusion. But what I would tell you, I gave you some insight to what's important to me. That's included in this book. I certainly know that Martin Dempsey is a huge supporter of the issue of trust and integrity. But this book covers it in a little better than what I've just explained. And I would tell you, it's probably one of the better books out there over the issue of servant leadership. Um, it's unfortunate, and I've worked for some bosses like this, where the boss, everybody has to serve up to them. Whereas what Martin Dempsey talks about in his book is actually no, that's the reverse of what it's supposed to be. Leaders are there to serve the people that work for them. And so this is an excellent book to explain that. It's really not 100%, but very close to the basic approach that I've tried to take in leadership. And it's also a key part of mentoring as well, to explain how this all can work and some great examples of how it's been successful. But if you're looking for just an insight that kind of reflects a bit about my own background, this book by Martin Dempsey and Ori Braffman is an excellent one. So I've gone over my time that I thought this would take. I can be a very talkative person. I apologize for that. But let me stop at this point and see if there's any questions.
Is there anyone who has any questions? Okay. Mr. Day, thank you very much for your speech. It's very knowledgeable, and I will share this recording with all of you, as well as all of the participants of YNBC. I'm sure many people will make use of your speech. It was a pleasure to hear all of this. Is there anybody who would like to share a speech about themselves, their interests, maybe for the participants now, or for sharing later on through other medias of YNBC?
Sorry. Oh, first of all, I would say thank you for Mr. Day for the really interesting presentation. Secondly, I would like to say that it's interesting to see someone from another country who will do the same, I would say, job which I do. Because, well, I was working for a while for the Russian Post, and I was more than 15 years involved for the e-commerce and postal service. Yeah, so I pretty well know what is the operation about. Yeah, that's interested to hear it from the different perspective, different country, and really this your inspiration about what you are talking about, people communication. Pretty interesting and exciting. Yeah, that's to know such knowledge from you. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ishigov. Is anybody else willing to say something? Mr. Toropchin, would you like to share something?
Yeah, if you say so. Thank you very much, Mr. Dave, for your amazing speech and inspiring presentation. Yeah, if our honorable chair asks to share something about ourselves, then I will just briefly introduce myself. I come from the academia rather than business, but still teaching systems analysis and decision-making process at an English, not really English, but at a master's program using English as a medium of instruction, understand policy and policy making, and these are closely intertwined to absorb from each other. And in this regard, I hope I can contribute something to the YNBC activities on my side. So thank you again, Mr. Dave, for your presentation, and look forward to further meetings.
Victoria, would you like to share something as well?
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you, Mr. Day, for your presentation. I thought it was very enriching to know your background and experiences. So I'm from the legal field, and I mainly deal with the incorporation of companies, the life cycle of companies, and the exit strategies of companies, including mergers and acquisitions. The reason why I'm interested in YNBC is because I think Nikita's idea to really expand the business development in the Asia Pacific region and to really assist businesses in these formation and incorporation, it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing more on YNBC's work in the Asia Pacific region, particularly in deal making. So Nikita, it would be good if you could share more about yourself and your experiences as well. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Mr. Toropchin. I would like to thank you once again, everybody, and Mr. Dane, in fact, for sharing the brief speech. And yes, I basically shared all I wanted to share about YNBC. And myself, Mr. Day, you said you had experience with Korea. And I would like to share that I also lived for 10 years in South Korea. My father, in fact, was the trade representative of the Russian Federation for over 10 years. And now we're moving to Singapore, where I would like to actually move the headquarters of YNBC. And I really am looking forward to hosting more offline variants of YNBC's conferences by 2024 or maybe 2025, and would start making more regular monthly meetings with much more participants by 2023. As now YNBC just needs a little bit more time setting up and building its database properly. And we should be starting to operate more efficiently in 1 month's time. And I'm looking forward to gathering you all once again, and would like to share this conference in more public manner to engage and attract more members for communication. And on that note, I would like to end this conference. All have been said was mentioned, and thank you for joining. I guess we will see you all next time.
Yeah. Thank you. See you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Nikita. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.